The forest was still. A heavy silence hung in the air, broken only by the occasional rustle of wind through the trees. At the edge of the clearing stood a small log cabin, moss-covered roof blending into the landscape like it had grown from the earth itself. But the real strangeness wasn't the house. It was the girl standing in front of it, alone, barefoot and motionless, flanked by two massive black wolves. Her eyes were pale blue and unblinking. Her vest, dark green and rugged, looked like it had seen years of wear. And the wolves, they weren't just animals. They were watching, waiting, like sentinels guarding something sacred. Her name was Lena Whitaker. She had lived in that cabin for 4 years, ever since the accident that took her parents. Everyone in the nearby town of Red Hollow thought the place had been abandoned. No one had seen her since she was 7. Some whispered that the forest had swallowed her. Others believed something darker had. But Lena had survived, and not alone. She had been found by 2 wolves days after the accident. Ash and Thorne. No one believed her when she said they protected her. But they had. Every single day since. That evening the air felt wrong. Heavy. Off balance. Lena stood still, staring into the trees as the wolves tensed beside her. She didn't speak, but she felt it. Something was coming. Something that didn't belong. A scent. A sound. An instinct she had learned to trust. Somewhere beyond the woods, a truck rumbled to a stop, its engine cutting out in the distance. Inside, 3 men prepared to break in. They believed the place was empty. They believed there was something inside worth stealing. They didn't believe in the girl. Or the wolves. Inside the cabin, the men crept through the front door after kicking it open. Their flashlights swept across wooden floors, shelves of dusty books, and a mantel with a single faded photograph. Lena and her parents. One man laughed as he picked it up. "Place is a gold mine," he whispered. "Just a scared little girl living out here all alone." But he didn't finish the sentence. Outside, the forest came alive. Ash circled wide through the brush while Thorne crept low to the door. Lena stayed in the shadows. Her pulse was steady, her eyes sharp. She touched the carved wolf hanging from her vest and gave a single nod. The wolves moved without sound, without fear. This was their home, and no one entered without consequence. And then the growl, deep, echoing, final. The growl came low and deep from the darkness. Ricky froze mid-step, the flashlight beam in his hand shaking as it swept across the cabin wall. "What the hell was that?" he muttered. Derek, behind him, drew a knife without hesitation. "Probably just a raccoon," he said. But even his voice didn't sound convinced. Miller stayed near the doorway, uncomfortable from the moment they entered. The air felt heavier now, dense and watching. The scent of pine and smoke was overtaken by something primal. Something alive. Outside, Lena crouched behind the woodpile, listening. Her fingers grazed the dirt, grounding herself, as she focused on the rhythm of Ash's movement through the trees. Thorne was already in position, crouched low behind the porch. The cabin was not just shelter, it was a trap, one Lena knew better than anyone. Every loose floorboard, every creaking stair, every hiding place in the walls. She wasn't just defending her home, she was drawing them in. Inside, Ricky moved toward the fireplace, where the photo still sat crooked on the mantel. "Old family," he muttered again. He picked it up, turning it over. "She's gotta have something valuable left behind." His words were cut short by the sharp thump of something hitting the outside wall. Miller jumped. "Did you hear that?" Ricky turned, irritated. "Relax. We've got this." But he didn't notice the golden eyes staring in through the back window. Thorne's breath fogged the glass for just a second before disappearing. Derek was the first to move toward the hallway. "Check the back rooms," he ordered, pushing a bedroom door open. As he stepped inside, the floor groaned beneath him, then snapped. His foot plunged into a false panel Lena had set years ago. He cursed loudly, stuck. That was the moment Lena had been waiting for. She signaled softly, just a single exhale. Ash moved. The black blur of fur crashed through the back window with a shatter of glass and wood. Derek barely had time to scream before Ash was on him, fangs bared, knocking him flat to the ground. Ricky turned in panic, raising his pistol, but froze when he saw Thorne standing in the open doorway, chest heaving, teeth exposed, growling like thunder. Miller dropped his flashlight, and Lena stepped through the front door, calm, silent, eyes locked on the man who had once laughed at her parents' photo. The wolves stood beside her now, not beasts, but guardians. For the first time in 4 years, someone had entered her world, and they were going to learn the hard way that she was not the one who needed saving. Ricky didn't move. His hand hovered near the pistol, but he knew, if he twitched, he'd be dead. Thorne's golden eyes burned into him with a knowing intelligence that felt too human, too precise. Ash had Derek pinned, his muzzle dangerously close to the man's throat. The silence in the cabin was now unbearable, broken only by the frantic breath of the invaders and the low growl vibrating from deep inside the wolves' chests. Lena stepped forward slowly, never looking away from Ricky. Her small hand reached toward Ash, who responded without hesitation. With a low snarl, Ash backed away from Derek but never turned his back. Lena didn't yell. She didn't threaten. She simply said, "You don't belong here." Her voice was steady, eerily calm for a child. Ricky blinked. What are you?" he stammered, eyes darting from her to the wolves. Lena tilted her head slightly, her expression unreadable. "I live here, and they live with me." Miller, standing frozen near the doorway, looked at Lena like he was seeing a ghost. "You're Whitaker's girl. You're supposed to be dead." At the sound of her last name, Lena's eyes changed. The calm cracked just slightly. She took a step back, and a memory surged. Her father shouting, the crash of metal, her mother's scream, the wolves appearing for the first time. A single flash, then it was gone. "You knew my name," Lena said slowly. "How?" Ricky's face went pale. He lowered his hand from the pistol. "We didn't know anyone was alive," he said. "We thought, the fire. They said no one made it out." Lena's jaw tightened. "I did." Her voice was almost a whisper now. Thorne edged closer, his growl a warning. Ricky stepped back involuntarily, brushing against the wall. For the first time, the wolves weren't the most frightening thing in the room. Lena was. Then, Derek coughed, blood on his lip, wrist likely broken, and spat. "This is insane. They're just animals." He reached for his knife again, but this time Lena raised her voice. "Don't." It wasn't a plea. It was a command. And somehow it worked. Derek froze. There was something in her eyes, something wild and ancient, that made even a man like him hesitate. Lena's fingers curled into a fist. The wolves responded without a word spoken. Outside, the forest began to stir. Birds scattered. The wind shifted. And in that eerie moment, Miller looked past Lena, into the dark, and whispered, "There's more of them out there, isn't there?" No one answered Miller's question, but he already knew. The way the trees moved outside, how the wind shifted and seemed to carry breath instead of breeze. It all pointed to something unnatural. Or maybe not unnatural, but ancient. Ricky stepped toward the door slowly, trying to peer past the porch. Nothing but blackness. Still, he swore he saw movement. Shapes low to the ground, weaving between the trees. Watching. Waiting. Lena stood quietly in the center of the room, her face emotionless. But inside, everything was shifting. That name, Whitaker, had hit her like a stone. Not because she had forgotten it, but because someone else remembered. They weren't just random thieves. They knew who she was, who her parents were. That changed everything. "Why were you really here?" she asked coldly. Ricky didn't answer right away. Miller looked at the ground. Only Derek had the nerve to speak. "We knew about your father's research. Thought he left something behind. Something valuable." A flash of memory hit her like lightning. Her father hunched over his desk late at night, sketching animal patterns, taking notes, whispering to her mother about something he had found. "They're not like the others," he once said. "It's not just behavior, it's connection." Lena hadn't understood then. She was starting to now. Her father had been studying the wolves, not just observing, communicating. Derek and the others hadn't come for jewelry or antiques. They came for secrets. You thought there was money in this, Lena said. But you didn't understand what you were walking into. Ricky spoke now, his voice lower. Your dad was onto something. People knew it. He had government eyes on him. Quiet ones. We figured whatever he had was still out here. Lena's face darkened. He was trying to protect them, she whispered. And you're the reason he's dead. The words weren't loud, but they cracked through the room like thunder. Ash moved forward again, positioning himself between Lena and Derek, who now looked like he regretted every decision that brought him to this place. Miller, shaken, leaned against the wall. We should leave, he said quietly. Now. We were wrong. This was a mistake. Ricky didn't answer. His eyes weren't on Lena anymore. They were on the tree line outside. More movement, more glowing eyes, and then a howl, long, deep, rising over the treetops. It wasn't Ash. It wasn't Thorne. There were others, and they were closing in. The howl echoed through the forest like a signal. A low vibration followed, subtle, almost imperceptible, like the earth itself had exhaled. Ricky stepped back from the window, heart racing. How many are out there? He muttered. Lena didn't answer. She didn't need to. From the moment they arrived, they had been watched, judged, surrounded. This was no accident. The forest had allowed them to enter, but it would decide if they left. Thorne moved toward the front door and sat, still growling, eyes fixed on the trees. Ash remained near Lena, as always, his posture calm but ready. Miller pushed off the wall, voice trembling. We don't even know what they are. These aren't normal wolves. Lena finally looked at him, not with hatred, but with something colder, pity. They are normal. You just don't understand what that means. Then she turned to Ricky. You came here chasing secrets, but you brought death with you. Derek, still injured, pulled himself up with difficulty, using the wall to stand. We didn't kill your parents, he spat. That fire wasn't us. Lena's eyes locked on him. You were connected to the people who did, she replied. And now you're standing where they stood, making the same mistakes. Ricky stepped forward, trying to reassert control. Listen, we'll go. We'll leave right now. Just let us walk. Lena didn't move. Her silence was louder than any threat. Suddenly, movement outside. Shadows darted between the trees, silent, swift, and unmistakable. More wolves, larger than Ash and Thorne. Their eyes glowed the same golden hue, but their bodies were leaner, older. Elders. Lena stepped forward, now standing directly in front of the broken window. You weren't just trespassers, she said. You were a test. The forest wanted to see if I was ready. Ricky's voice cracked. Ready for what? Lena didn't answer. Behind her, the air in the cabin shifted. The fire in the hearth flared briefly, though no one touched it. Outside, the other wolves had formed a ring around the cabin, motionless, waiting. It wasn't an ambush. It was a ritual. Miller dropped to his knees, head in his hands. We shouldn't have come. God, we shouldn't have come. And Derek, finally sensing the weight of what surrounded them, whispered, What is she? Lena turned her head slightly, eyes glowing faintly in the firelight. I'm not the girl you thought you'd find. I'm what they raised me to be. And the wolves howled again, this time in unison. The first to run was Derek. Limping, breath ragged, he shoved past Ricky and Miller, ignoring Lena and the wolves as he hurled himself out the front door into the blackness. For a moment, there was only silence. Then a snarl, a blur of movement, a scream that cut through the trees like a blade. And then, nothing, not even birdsong. Ricky stared at the door, frozen. Miller backed away, mouth trembling. He didn't even make it to the trees, he whispered. Lena didn't flinch. She stood perfectly still, her face lit by the flickering firelight. This place has rules, she said quietly. It gives warnings, protects itself, and it punishes those who ignore the warnings. Ricky turned on her. You think this is justice? You're a child. Lena's eyes narrowed. I was. Not anymore. Ash moved to her side, and Thorne remained near the window. Outside, the ring of wolves hadn't broken formation. They didn't need to. They were waiting for her. Miller sank to the floor, covering his face. We were wrong. We were just trying to survive. We didn't know what we were walking into. His voice cracked. Lena stared at him a long time, and something shifted behind her gaze. A memory. Her mother's hands brushing her hair back at bedtime, whispering, "Be kind when you can, but don't ever let them hurt what you love." Lena stepped forward. Ash didn't follow this time. She was in control now. "Then tell me the truth," she said to Miller. "Why did you come? Not the story Ricky told you. The real reason." Miller hesitated, then nodded slowly. "I was there the night of the fire, not inside. I was the lookout. I didn't know they'd kill your parents. I thought it was just a robbery." He looked up at her. "I saw you, running into the woods. I thought you wouldn't survive." Lena took a deep breath. Her hands were shaking slightly now, not from fear, but from the weight of memory. "I almost didn't." Ricky, furious, grabbed Miller by the collar. "What the hell are you doing? Confessing? We need to get out of here." But as he turned toward the door, a sound stopped him. Cold footsteps on the porch. Not wolves. Human. Slow. Heavy. A silhouette appeared through the broken doorframe. Broad shoulders. Hat in hand. A voice called out, gruff, commanding, "Step away from the girl." Lena's heart skipped. She knew that voice. Sheriff Carol Briggs had found them. Sheriff Carol Briggs stepped into the doorway like she owned the place. Calm, eyes sharp, one hand resting on her holstered weapon. Her presence shifted the atmosphere instantly. The wolves didn't growl. They simply watched. Lena stood silently, her expression unreadable. Ricky backed away, unsure if this woman was salvation or a new threat. "Sheriff," he gasped. "Thank God. You have no idea what's happening here." Briggs scanned the room with practiced eyes. Broken window, blood on the floor, fear all around. But it was Lena who held her attention. The girl stood tall, unafraid, flanked by two black wolves that didn't so much as twitch. "Lena Whitaker," she said softly. "You're alive." Lena didn't answer. Ash and Thorne remained still, but alert. Briggs stepped further inside. "I've been looking for you. For years." Her voice wasn't harsh. There was a hint of sadness in it. "I knew your father. I never believed you were gone." Miller raised both hands, slowly. "She saved us. These men," he pointed at Ricky, "came here to steal something, to hurt her. She didn't hurt anyone unless she had to." Briggs glanced at him, then back to Lena. "What happened to your parents, sweetheart?" The words hit like ice. Lena's jaw tightened. Her voice, when it came, was low. "People like them came into our home. They thought my father was hiding something. When he wouldn't give it to them, they set the fire." A long silence followed. Ricky shifted, but didn't speak. Briggs narrowed her eyes. "And you?" she asked Ricky. "What's your part in this?" Ricky didn't respond. The tension was thick. Finally, Briggs turned to Lena again. "Your father, he talked about things no one understood. About wolves. About the forest being alive. I thought it was grief. I thought he was broken after his research got shut down." Lena shook her head. "He wasn't broken. He saw the truth." Briggs looked outside, where the other wolves still waited among the trees. "And now I'm seeing it too," she whispered. She holstered her weapon. "I didn't come here to take you, Lena. I came because I heard something in the woods tonight. Something old. And I followed it here." Lena stepped closer. "You're not afraid?" Briggs gave a tired smile. "I've been afraid of the wrong things for too long." Behind them, the fire crackled again. Ricky slowly reached into his coat. None of them noticed. The metallic click was soft, but in a room that silent, it was deafening. Sheriff Briggs turned just in time to see Ricky's hand emerging from his coat, gripping the pistol he'd hidden since the moment she walked in. His eyes were wild now, not with confidence, but with panic. "I'm not going down for this," he spat. "I didn't come all this way to die in the woods." Lena didn't move. Neither did the wolves. But their eyes followed Ricky with the precision of trained soldiers. Briggs drew her weapon instantly, aiming center mass. "Don't do it," she warned, voice firm. "You don't know what you're about to start." Ricky's hands shook, finger hovering over the trigger. "She's not normal," he shouted. "She's controlling them. You saw it. She's part of this." Ash growled low, the sound sending a vibration through the cabin floor. Lena's breath hitched, but she didn't back down. Then Ricky aimed not at Briggs but at Lena. The shot rang out. Everything exploded into motion. Ash lunged, knocking Lena to the side just as the bullet sliced through the air. Briggs fired back, her shot striking Ricky clean in the shoulder. He stumbled backward with a cry, dropping his weapon as Thorne leapt forward, teeth flashing. But Lena's voice rose above the chaos. "Stop!" The wolves froze mid-motion, mere inches from Ricky's throat. He collapsed to the floor, gasping, clutching his arm in agony. The room fell into stunned silence again, smoke from the gunfire drifting through the broken window. Briggs lowered her weapon, hands trembling. "You all right?" she asked, looking at Lena. The girl sat on the floor, Ash protectively nudging her with his head. She nodded, slowly. "I'm fine," she said, but her eyes were wet, and her hand shook as she reached for the carved wolf pendant at her chest. "He didn't deserve mercy," Thorne seemed to say with his eyes, but he obeyed her command anyway. Outside, the wolves began to move again, not in chaos, but in retreat. Slowly, one by one, they vanished back into the trees. Lena stood, turning to Briggs. "It's over," she said softly. "For now." Briggs nodded, looking down at Ricky, who now lay unconscious. "We'll get him out of here, and we'll make sure no one else comes looking for this place again." But Lena didn't look convinced. She stared at the forest, her eyes distant. The balance had been broken. Blood had been spilled. Something had been awakened in the woods, and it wouldn't go back to sleep so easily. And deep in the trees, the howling began again. Morning light filtered through the trees, pale and cold. Smoke still curled from the chimney of the cabin, mixing with the mist that clung to the forest floor. Sheriff Briggs sat on the front steps, a bandage wrapped around her forearm, eyes fixed on the dirt trail where the ambulance had driven off with Ricky. He was alive for now, and maybe that was justice enough. But inside the cabin, another kind of healing had just begun. Lena sat cross-legged by the fireplace, her wolves lying beside her. Ash resting his head on her lap, Thorne curled protectively near the door. She looked older now, not in her face but in her eyes. Something had shifted inside her. She hadn't spoken much since the night before, but her silence wasn't fear, it was reflection. For the first time, someone from the outside world had seen what she had become, and hadn't run. Briggs stepped back inside, her boots leaving muddy prints on the wooden floor. She watched Lena quietly for a moment before speaking. "I looked through the old case files last year," she said. "Your dad's research wasn't just biology. It was behavioral, emotional. He believed wolves could bond the same way humans do. Maybe deeper." Lena didn't look up. "He was right," she whispered. "They're not just animals. They feel what I feel. They knew I was alone before I did." There was a long pause. Then Lena reached into a small wooden box near the fireplace and pulled out a torn notebook, her father's journal. Pages stained with smoke, the handwriting shaky near the end. She handed it to Briggs without a word. The sheriff turned the pages slowly, reading fragments about neural connections, trust-based training, and something more cryptic, symbiotic instinctual merge. She looked up, brow furrowed. "You were part of his experiment?" "No," Lena replied. "I was part of his purpose." She stood now, slowly, brushing ash from her vest. "He didn't try to change me. He just taught me how to listen. To them, to the forest, to myself." The wolves stirred as she spoke, as if responding to her voice. Briggs looked down at the journal again, then back at Lena. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. Lena walked to the open doorway, looking out at the trees. The forest no longer felt like a cage. It felt like home. But something told her it was time to step beyond it. Now I decide who I want to be, she said. Not just what I was made into. And somewhere beyond the trees, no wolves howled. Just silence. Peaceful. Temporary. The days that followed were quiet, but not empty. Sheriff Briggs stayed a while longer, helping repair the cabin window and clearing what remained of the chaos. No reporters came. No news vans. Briggs made sure of that. Some stories, she told Lena, are better left between those who lived them. Lena agreed. And the forest seemed to as well. Its silence was no longer threatening, but calm, almost grateful. Each morning, Lena walked the same trail her father once walked. Ash and Thorne followed without command, their presence a rhythm to her every step. The trees whispered like old friends. But something had changed in her. She was no longer hiding. She no longer feared the world beyond the treeline. For the first time in 4 years, she wasn't just surviving. She was becoming. Not just the girl who lived with wolves, but the girl who learned from them. One evening, Lena sat with Briggs on the porch, watching the sun bleed through the pine trees. You could come with me, the sheriff offered gently. I could find you a home, a school, something stable. Lena didn't answer at first. She looked out toward the forest, where distant movement suggested others still watched, silent guardians in the trees. This is my home, she said. But maybe I can visit yours. Briggs smiled, a tired, warm smile only someone with years of pain behind her could give. Then I'll be here, whenever you're ready. She stood, took one final look at the girl, and left without a goodbye. It wasn't needed. Lena watched her walk down the trail until the forest swallowed her completely. Then she turned back toward the cabin, her parents' cabin. Her cabin now. That night, Lena took the carved wolf pendant from around her neck and hung it on a small branch near the cabin door. A quiet offering, not of grief, but of memory. A way to mark that she was ready to begin again. Ash laid at her feet. Thorne stood watch near the trees. Above them, the stars blinked through the clearing. Quiet witnesses to a story no one else would ever fully understand. And as Lena closed her eyes, wrapped in the hush of the forest and the warmth of her wolves, she whispered softly to the night, "Thank you for giving me back more than you took." And for the first time since the fire, she slept without fear.